Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast. I'm your host, Allison Nissen, and today I am lucky enough to have with me Janine Watkins. Janine, why don't you give me a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
Okay, thank you. I am Janine Watkins. I was born and raised in Southern California, and I'm currently living in Minnesota. A lot of people usually ask why and how did that happen. Shortly after I was living in New York City, I met the love of my life while I was working as a field engineer in New York City at the LaGuardia airport. By default, I'm a civil engineer by trade, but I was willing to trade in all of that to become an author and a fitness instructor. And this new phase of my life just feels absolutely magical. A little bit more of a background. I'm one of 5 children who comes from a divorced family. And it kind of turns out that I've always had this internal curiosity about what the world would look like if people were 100% responsible for their own lives and their pursuit of happiness. And so within this book that I had just released, it takes the internal curiosities that I've had and experienced through my own Sonder Lives that I created in this new saga. And so what I've instilled for my readers is a way to explore self-discovery, knowing that one has to go beyond their defined words in this world if they're ever going to discover what it means to be limitless in this story with Saunders' life. So that's pretty much the background of my life and how I became an author, and what it means for me to be this now published world of Sonder.
Sonder. Is Sonder you?
Yes, she is similar to a doppelganger, although the definition of Sonder, which was written back in 2015 by a definition of obscure sorrows, is the recognition that everyone that you come in contact with, whether they're on a road or they're in your class or you're just in a movie theater with them, has a unique and very favorable type of life, regardless of you realizing that it's occurring. So everyone is a Sonder being, and this just takes place from a girl who happened to be called Sonder.
I love that. So the idea is ultimate responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah. And what does ultimate responsibility look like for Saunders?
Well, for Saunders specifically, it's recognizing that we're here on our own journey, and on your journey, you are to discover whatever has you be here. And to have that be in the background, but also the forefront of your mindset, is to be aware that when you're confronted with frustrations or things that just challenge you, it is a game, and a lot of people don't enjoy playing this game. And as humans, we've kind of been conditioned sometimes to find fault with others. So if we were able to turn that into a game and recognize that this is for us to learn, will we actually step up and learn this game, or do we not and just have the lesson rewrite, recycle, and come back as a new form? So I'm someone who shamelessly has been in more than one relationship, and a lot of times you're like, oh, like I always run into those cheaters, or I always run into the people who use me or belittle me. And sometimes it's just recognizing, okay, maybe I'm supposed to learn from this. And if I can discover what has me being responsible, you all of a sudden can find that relationship that you love, or have those open conversations where you no longer feel like you're a victim and you can become the overall victor.
This is an amazing story. I love this character. I mean, really, I think I identify with this character a lot. How long did it take you to write the story?
I'm glad you asked. It actually, again, started, in my mind, I thought authors were just one and done. You write it in a year. This actually took me about 5 years just to get my first series of this 4-part saga out. So yeah, 5 years.
5 years. Well, that's persistence.
Thank you.
So I like that you want to explore the relationship with self. And really, that's what it is, right? It's a relationship of self-discovery. So when you first started talking, I was thinking, is it a little more reincarnation? But I guess it's reincarnation within each moment of your life, meaning you keep not reinventing, but striving for more openness and honestness with who you are and the decisions that you make.
Absolutely, Allison, especially with the choices you make, and then also becoming responsible for the words you leave people with too, which is actually a very profound discovery I had when I was thinking about how my family has been interacting with myself and how I've been interacting with others. Because so often we're like, oh, someone hurt us. And so our first reaction sometimes is to like get them back. And it's like, what if we could actually just like take it back and realize maybe what they said might have hurt us, but they might be dealing with things themselves. So being responsible for not only the way you act, but how you leave people.
Yes. What is it? We have 2 ears to listen and only one mouth to speak.
Yes, I love that one.
So tell me about your writing routine. How did it start?
Well, it actually started out with me journaling. I had no idea that when I first started journaling about like busy days or times at my office, again, I was working as a civil engineer, and there were just so many days I would come home and just feel so defeated, or times when I just felt like so, for lack of better terms, a fish out of water. Because I was a civil engineer for the first 5 years of my career after graduating from college, and like I was always called a non-typical engineer. I didn't really know what that meant until I got out into the industry, and people were like, "You're not going to make it," or like, "You're way too happy," or you're just not what I'm used to. And so I started thinking that is like a negative thing. And so when I was really reflecting on what it meant for me as someone who was out there and trying to put myself out there and trying not to have this bother me, like having that thicker skin, I started to discover what it meant for me to really feel as like myself, not just as a person who was participating in this industry that I had chosen. I started realizing that maybe the way that other people were reflecting to the way I wasn't necessarily something normal for them. So my writing exercises used to just be like me taking note of like moments where I just felt less than, I don't even know if the word would be considered now, but my writing journey actually did start when I would start writing down moments I didn't feel like I fit in. So it literally just used to be like excerpts, and those little excerpts ended up semi-developing dialogue, as if like, what if this situation went the way I wanted? So in those exercises while I was in New York City, one thing that I started doing outside of when I was in California is I started being responsible and starting having these conversations, not just on paper, but then revisit them the next day. So when you're asking how my my writing journey started, it was more of me taking what had happened in a day that made me feel kind of in a funk and really working it out. Because as an engineer, we're trained to be analytical thinkers, right? And so it's not just problem solving with a project, it was problem solving with people. And so I would write down what happened, how I would have liked it to happen. And then the next day when I would run into a coworker or one of my employees, because I oversaw teams, sometimes I would go up to them and actually have the full conversation of, I want this conversation to go this way, because we'd be on projects for years, Allison, and it's kind of an interesting thing that I developed as a child. Was a lot of times if someone said that the way I was doing things wasn't right, I would just accept that as they're right, I'm wrong. But when you become like someone's boss and you start taking these roles on as an adult, I'm like, I can't be like this anymore. Like, I need to actually step up and be like, this is not right. And so what started out as me just journaling down turned out almost being like my little pep talks in the mirror of like, okay, Janine, you're going to go back in there. You're going to let them know maybe it's not right, but let's find common ground. I didn't know it was going to turn into a book, but that is how it happened. It developed as me having pep talks with myself, and then realizing that those pep talks actually could be used in the office, and they could be used as more than just a feeling defeated. I could actually feel triumphant and find common ground again. So that's actually how it really started out.
So does the book read like a novel, or does it read a little bit more like a journal?
It does both, actually, because I take excerpts that I had written, and I call them my inner thoughts. So her journal actually has a nickname, Mitt. So you'll read some of them where it'll be her having a conversation with Mitt, and then she'll flash into that memory. Because this character themselves takes on a role after, and I'm going to give you a little, I guess, spoiler. The way that the book starts out is the main character comes in as a pixelated being. Like, she's on a spaceship and she kind of has fragmented memories, but when she tries to interact with the people who are on the spaceship, she can't. So it's almost like she's in limbo, and she's discovering she has to complete certain things that weren't finished when she was actually a full person. So she's pixelated only because she still has these fragments of uncompleteness. So as she's discovering what it means to revisit these memories through MIT, she's able to have those final conversations to actually have it be complete. So I'm glad you asked that. It actually does go back and forth between finishing conversations she has written down that led her frustrated and then having them be finished.
So it's a science fiction, but it's really an exploration of self. I think this is a fantastic concept. And I look forward to being able to open the cover and read it, because it sounds like something I would really enjoy. Tell me how your life has changed now that you've actually published your first part of the series.
I'm so glad you asked. Again, with everything going on in 2020, I had no idea back in 2015 how relevant it was going to be to have these types of conversations in my life before everyone was stuck inside. So since my book has been published and these conversations have happened, one of the greatest things that I'm so proud to say is, at least in my dedication to my parents and my siblings, is realizing that I'm able to be more honest with them about how I'm living my life, and not be so shelled. Because since I started writing my book and I published it, the way I can explain it to a lot of people who knew me, especially in college, is my life on paper looked pristine. Like, one of 5 children. My dad was a plastic surgeon. He had a Porsche. My mom was stay at home. She did all the PTA, going to schools, doing all the fun projects. So when my parents got divorced, like, everyone was like, oh, well, what happened? And I just shut off. And so even in college, like, people were like, wow, your life sounds so amazing. And again, I just felt like, yes, it looked so great on the outside because I was still with all of them, but none of them really talked. And it's interesting because, again, being from divorced families, a lot of people will kind of understand that even though parents and siblings will still have their lives go on, for me, there was just an emptiness that I was feeling a little bit. And so since then, like, I actually got into those conversations, like, was asking my mom, what's it like for our older siblings not to actually have a working relationship with you as much? Like, what was it like when we went from having like 6-figure income to living on welfare and having to get support from our grandparents? And so these types of conversations that I was always raised to think were supposed to just be normal, I was like, that's not normal. And so now, sitting 30 years young, I'm having these types of conversations where it's not something that my family shuts away from. Like, now we're actually being on a level where we can talk about these things. So since my book has been published, I just feel so much more free. And like I had mentioned with relationships, like, I went from having like nonstop, like, I don't know how to explain it without it sounding, I guess, fairy tale-ish, but I didn't believe that you could be in a working relationship. I had never had a relationship last more than a year without having problems. And now I'm sitting at a 4-year-long relationship thinking, man, like, it was so worth going that extra lap to have self-reflection be like a nonstop thing for me. So yeah, since I published my book, it's been so open.
That is a wonderful journey. I love how you describe it. Janine, how can people get in touch with you?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. I have a couple of social media platforms. The one that I'm the most constant on right now is Instagram. I can be found at, I don't know if you say @ sign, but at Instagram, ninja_9E. So it's Ninjanine. Or on social media for Facebook people, you can find me at Janine Ayana Watkins for the more opened version of Janine. And then if you are looking for more of a business oriented, you can always find me at Janine Watkins. So Ayana for the more insightful, and then Janine Watkins for the more front face.
All right. Well, Janine, are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
I am so ready for this. Let's go.
All right. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Ooh, we were actually talking about this the other day. I usually pick invisibility, although the one that I love, and it actually comes with an acronym, is know it all. So I would love to be able to, like, put my hand right over a book or look at someone deeply in their eyes and just be able to get what the point is, like get the key understanding of whatever it is that I am focused on absorbing.
What's your favorite way to relax?
Meditation.
Meditation. What type of meditation? Do you have a specific one you do, or?
I have two now. So my one friend who's a Buddhist was teaching me about how they do giving thanks or Thanksgiving, and you're able to open up your broad of like looking from where your front force is and all the way to your periffs to the side. And then the one that I had just recently learned from my friend's son out here in Minnesota was to have like an orb. So I bought a little Casil, I call her Casil, a little Casil orb that I just stare into intently, and the little glints change ever so slightly, but just to focus on a point that has a constant perspective change.
And lastly, what possession would you downsize if given the opportunity?
My closet. It only has to be downsized because a lot of it I do within like every year, and this year's gonna be differently done, but I have a Playa Fashion Makeover bin that every year I fill with stuff that I take with me and my partner, we take to Burning Man. And this is the first year that it's not going to be downsized that way. So I got to figure out a new way to evolve in this 2020 fun game called Downsize Closet without giving it away at Playa Fashion Makeover.
Wow, that's awesome. Was that question 2 or question 3? I don't remember.
Oh, that was 3. The first
that
one.
Was 3. There we go. I lose count. I love these. I love getting to know our authors. Thank you so much, Janine Watkins, for stopping by.
Thanks for creating this space so much. Thank you.
You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast. I'm your host, Allison Nissen. Allison out. Boom! We're all done.
Oh my gosh, that was awesome.
Janine Watkins traded in her career as a field engineer at New York City's LaGuardia Airport to become an author, fitness instructor, and world traveler. Janine's hope is that the Sonder Lives saga will instill in all its readers the curiosity about what the world would look like if we were 100% responsible for ourselves in our pursuit of happiness. For more information about Janine, visit her at subscribepage.com/Sonder Lives. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit us on the web at floridawriters.net.